We'll begin with the summary. A screenless tablet requires a computer and is good for all types of game art. I can't recommend everyone to have one of these, even if you get something else. It's really cheap and capable. A pen display requires a computer, but lets you look where you're drawing. It is good for all types of game art. The main drawback is that they're quite expensive relative to quality, quite often have terrible screens, and they're generally not portable and quite bulky. A mouse is the cheapest option, but because of how terrible it is, I only recommend it for people who are getting started and have no budget. You also kinda need to be fine with just doing pixel art or simple 3D work. Hand-drawn art will be terrible. A 2-in-1 fits those that both need a laptop and a pen display at the same time. You can do any type of game art, but it might sometimes feel a bit too small. An iPad is only something I would recommend for people that do hand-drawn art. It's portable, a great drawing experience, and very convenient. For hand-drawn art, I personally think it's the best drawing device. The main drawback is that the software for 3D and pixel art is bad compared to computer software. Okay, so let's go into more details and explain why I think like I do. Let's start with the overall things to look out for. First and foremost, I find that the specs are quite often a lie. Not an outright lie, it's just that things such as level of pressure sensitivity and the like aren't really things that make your pen good or terrible to draw with. In general, the biggest factors will be things such as the pen creating wobbly lines when drawing slowly. As such, if you're looking at a particular device and wondering if the drawing experience is good enough, it tends to be better to look at reviews. I would personally try to ensure that whatever device you get does not have a pen that needs to be charged. This is in some sense a small thing, but if you draw sporadically like every third day, you're going to end up in a situation where it feels like the pen is out of battery every single time you want to draw. So now you have to either wait an hour for the pen to charge or draw with the cord attached as if you're at the post office. And there are a lot of reasonable options without a battery or with a nice charging solution like the iPad Pro. So saving a few bucks in the short term by getting a pen with a battery might not be worth it. There's one thing that you won't quite know beforehand whether you need or not, and that is express keys. I personally need it. I need something tactile to click on when drawing. Even with the iPad, I almost always draw with the keyboard attached, so that I can undo using buttons. But there are a considerable amount of people that don't care for them, and it can be tricky to know beforehand where you will land in that regard. Quite often, however, you can substitute express keys with a keyboard, so it might not be the end of the world. Bulkiness is one of those things that you might not consider initially, but much like needing to charge your pen, having a really bulky device can be cumbersome to make room for, or even tricky to store away, so you can easily make it so that you draw less, and thus get less progress on your game. Let's go over each device, and the benefits and downsides of them. We have iPads, screenless tablets, pen displays, 2-in-1s, and even a mouse. We'll start with the mouse. It's going to be the free option. And technically it works, but I would say that in general, what you might save in money, you'll lose in time. This can be extremely tricky to draw with because you lack constant precision over the movement, meaning you often have to redo your lines. This can be fine though. If you don't know if you're going to continue with game dev or game art in the future, then a mouse will get you somewhere. I would say that due to the lack of precision, you might limit yourself in terms of art style you can use with it. Pixel art tends to work quite well. I've just recently been drawing some pixel art for an upcoming video. I realized I tend to use both a drawing tablet and a mouse at the same time. You can also do some 3D, and perhaps even vector art using shapes, because you don't need the precision to the same extent. With that said, I frankly think it's next to impossible to do the type of hand-drawn 2D art that I do. I kind of want to try sometimes to see if I can. Overall, a mouse is comparably terrible to other options. I'd only recommend a mouse for the person who has a limited budget and is just getting started. And if you're getting serious with any form of game art, then one of the other options will be the way to go. A screenless tablet is possibly the cheapest option. I have mine here, which costs around $60, and drawing-wise is actually great. A tablet like this is actually comparable in drawing experience to other options such as an iPad or a pen display, but at a fraction of the price. For most people, there is a bit of a learning curve. It can be tricky to not look where you're drawing, and it can be considerably less fun to draw on it. But it isn't bad. This is actually what I use when I'm on the computer, because the benefits of it are really great. You can sit for longer stretches with it. You don't have to look down, so you don't really get that neck strain that you can get otherwise. It's also really easy to store somewhere else, and it doesn't take up much space when you use it. I'd say this option is fine for basically any art, be it high def, pixel art, vector, or 3D. It's also a fairly decent option if you're on the go a lot, since you can actually bring it with you. I would generally pick something around this size, medium to large, because you will generally adjust it to match the screen. This is in my opinion kind of the perfect size. If you're wondering what I'm using, it's a Huion HS611. It's generally good, but not necessarily for left-handed people, because the buttons are on the side where you're drawing, which kind of sucks for me because I'm left-handed. But I mean, I bought it knowing this, so I guess it isn't too bad. I'm personally biased towards these devices because I think that they're a really good deal. I think there are plenty of people that don't like drawing on them, but myself and a considerable amount of professional artists actually like them because of the portability and ergonomics. Overall, whether you will like this device really hinges on whether you find it enjoyable and nice to work without seeing where you're drawing. They're generally really good in all other regards. They do need a computer. I'd say that this is generally a good piece of kit to have regardless, because it can do every single type of game art at a high quality and at a cheap price. And even if you get a more expensive option, you might actually still use this from time to time. A pen display is going to be expensive. For many people, it might even be the dream device, because it's nice being able to look where you're drawing. So feature-wise, this is kind of the best. I have one, but at this point I never use it. So it could be worthwhile to cover why I don't. In general, the screens on these type of devices are going to be subpar, especially when you go for the cheaper pen displays. And it can be difficult to gauge how good the monitor actually is, because it might say 4K, but have really bad dynamic range. Once again, specs can often lie. On top of it, most pen displays add a texture on top of the screen, which makes it nicer to draw on, but it also reduces the quality of the image. A big thing with these is that they're generally incredibly bulky, and it can be tricky to make room for them in a way where they're quick to start using and also quick to store away somewhere else when you aren't drawing. And if you just always keep it ready to use, sort of tilting 30 degrees, then it's going to collect dust quickly. Overall, these are getting better, so whatever advice I give here will eventually become outdated. They are becoming less bulky and the screens are getting better, but they still tend to be quite expensive. I will say that it tends to be more fun to draw when you see where you're drawing, but if you're just getting into this stuff, just know that the pen display isn't going to make you a better artist. I'm equally bad at art when using this one compared to my pen display or iPad. These are decently ergonomic, definitely worse than screenless tablets, but you don't have to strain your neck too much. I don't really recommend this for people starting out. A screenless tablet is considerably cheaper and will probably be useful even if you have a screen, for instance if you're traveling. I'd say that this is for those that are getting serious about it. I'm generally pretty pessimistic about these, just because of how the market tends to be, and I'm sensitive about poor screen quality. But the fact of the matter is that they're really nice in other regards, and if you have money, it could be worth looking into. But I personally wouldn't buy a cheap pen display, because you might think that you're getting a good deal, but some part of that device is going to have bad hardware. How about a 2-in-1? I'm going to say that this sort of category is basically just Microsoft Surfaces, because a lot of the other 2-in-1s and even the older Surface that I had have a quite bad drawing experience, but the newer Surface Pros, as far as I'm aware, are comparable to most good tablets. The screens on these are awesome, and they're really portable devices. I would say that the biggest benefit of these are that they're portable and can help you do both game art and other game dev stuff on the same device. You can do pixel art, 3D, 2D, HD graphics, frankly most stuff. To be fair, they might struggle with complex 3D work, but that will mostly depend on the hardware of the 2-in-1 itself. Overall, these type of devices can feel a bit small and cramped, because most software is made for desktops, so you get these top and bottom bars that make the already small screen feel even smaller. These are technically expensive, but you do get a nice laptop and a good pen display. And given that, it is priced fairly reasonably. If you're a student or you travel a lot, these are actually quite a good deal. They're possibly my favorite form of laptops overall because of how portable they are, so I am somewhat biased. Previous Surface devices have focused on good palm reaction for note takers rather than nice drawing experience. So make sure that if you find one that has a pen, that it is actually good for drawing. An iPad is what I use for pretty much all my game art. I'd say personally that the drawing experience is the best with the iPad, largely thanks to Procreate, which is an awesome drawing software. The screen is great, better than my monitors. It's obviously quite portable. One of the bigger advantages of this device is that it's always ready to go. There's no startup, you just flip it open and click on Procreate and you have started drawing within 10 seconds. This might seem like a small thing, but if you're doing this type of game dev part-time or as a hobby, then you need to make the most out of the little time you have. So being able to squeeze in a small 10-minute drawing session makes you draw and create more. I personally draw using the keyboard folio attached because I'm really used to using buttons and expressive keys when drawing, and I like drawing at a bit of an angle. I'd say that the iPad, much like a 2-in-1, isn't particularly ergonomic, and I often get neck strain when using it. I'd say that if you're doing HD 2D graphics the way I am, then an iPad could be a good option. The drawing experience is great, they don't cost too much given what they offer, and they're also quite devices to have for watching movies and taking notes. But I think if you're doing 3D and pixel art type of things, or perhaps you try different things from time to time, then an iPad will be somewhat limited. You can do pixel art and 3D work on the iPad, but you lose a lot of the drawing benefits and computer programs like Blender and Sprite, which are really good compared to what the iPad has to offer. It's also somewhat annoying to transfer files, even if you set up a server. Not terrible, but there is some friction having to go back and forth between devices. You do also have the Samsung Galaxy tabs, and they're actually quite good drawing devices, so they could be worth looking into, even though I'm personally really biased towards Procreate and the iPad. In my personal opinion, Wacom, Huion, XP Pen, newer generations of Microsoft, Apple, and Samsung are the decent manufacturers. As always when buying tech, it's probably beneficial to look at a lot of reviews of the devices before you buy it. I personally always check Brad Colbo for reviews on a specific device, but I think you should check with a lot of people. As mentioned, I'm going to be heavily biased towards what I like. You just kind of have to find someone with the same biases as you. And as I mentioned, the market is changing. I just want you to be roughly aware of the pitfalls and benefits of each type of device. And I actually think they all kind of have their place. Feel free to ask questions in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Bye.